Hello, and welcome to Magic is Real, a podcast focused on the fascinating world of near-death experiences, spirit communication, and all things metaphysical and spiritual. The mission of this project is to share messages of hope and inspiration with others, and to spread the word that death is only an illusion. Thank you for being here with an open heart and mind. I wish you peace, light, and love always. Hello, Magic is Real listeners and family. I'm Shannon. I'm your host, the host of Magic is Real. And this is a podcast where we talk about spiritually transformative experiences and all things metaphysical and spiritual. And today I have with me Ragnar Ericssson. Welcome, Ragnar. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy to have you. Ragnar is a regular person. He's a salesperson. He's a family person. And you have a child, don't you?
I have 6 kids.
Yes. Okay. I knew that you had at least one. So I know that you're a dad, and but you've had a pretty profound spiritual experience that we're here to talk about today. So you've had a near-death experience. That's why we're here talking with you. And I wanted to start though by having you kind of talk about you, because I think who you are really informs your experience, your spiritually transformative experiences. And I really like to hear about where people come from and how their experiences either change them or don't change them, or just reinforce what they already knew or change their beliefs. So why don't you start wherever you're comfortable? Just kind of tell us who you are. What was your life like growing up, and what were your spiritual or non-spiritual beliefs?
Sure. So, I had a wild childhood,
Yeah.
for what, for anybody who's actually seen my YouTube channel. I've talked about a lot of those stories of, stepdads coming and going, and, mom liking to move every 6 months or so. And generally being a kind of fly by night kind of lifestyle as a kid. And, lots of people coming and going all the time. It was interesting, but I guess I was sort of blessed with the gift of song. I've been a singer since I was a kid, and I've been on stage since I was 3. I don't remember the first time my family kind of put me in front of a crowd. So uh, a whole lot of my childhood was, singing for mom's supper somewhere. and sometimes it was fun, but there was also sometimes a little bit of that. Hey, look what my monkey can do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Was it like Von Trapp family stuff, or was it just like you had this voice?
Me,
And did you,
me.
in what capacity did you perform?
I have always just sort of had an inborn gift for singing.
Mhm.
And my family, my grandparents on my mother's side actually had a gospel band in the
Wow.
Midwest in the 70s and 80s. So when they figured out that I could carry a tune at 3 years old, they put me in a little suit and put me on stage and had me sing Jesus Loves Me, because I guess that was adorable at the time.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure it
so
was.
yeah, I guess I wish I had some video of it. It'd be fun, but whatever that is looks good.
Rooibos tea.
There you go. I should have made an Earl Grey before we got started, but
I
whatever.
know.
There you go.
Hindsight is 2020.
It is. It is. I once thought I actually produced that phrase. I didn't. But
Oh.
anyway. But yeah, I mean, my childhood was not a lot different from a lot of people's childhood. One thing that I've certainly found from interacting with thousands upon thousands of people in a sales capacity, and just interacting with people because I enjoy doing so, is that everybody's got some stuff that happened when they were a kid that they wish didn't happen, and everybody's got some trauma, and everybody's got all that. And I don't focus on any of that, because I'm 43 years old now,
Yeah.
and there's a very distinct in my brain kind of dividing line between who I was when I was 8 and who I am at 43,
Mm-hmm.
as the parent of 6 kids, and having 4 adult children and a grandchild. And I don't dwell on any of that stuff, because at the end of the day, for me anyway, it just doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
and I think one of the things that was born out of this story that I know we're going to get to is that I I learned to ask myself a couple of questions a long time ago that changed my entire outlook of life. And it took me a long time to get there. But the series of questions is really easy. If I find myself getting upset about something that's not happening in the moment, right?
Hmm.
The first question obviously is that happening now?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, it's not happening now, then I stop.
Hmm.
Oh, that's you have a point. It's not happening now. Is it happening now? Yeah. Well, is it ever going to happen again? Well, if the answer is no, then I got to let that go.
That's
Bec-
great.
So, but if it is happening now, I got to address it. I got to deal with it.
It's the power of now. That's that's the essentially the concept of it. And it's also useful in trauma therapy is uh
Hmm.
you know, okay, that happened. That happened. Redirect your attention to the now, to your senses, to your hands, to the air around you, to the temperature of the room. And it's actually a quite useful tool. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So
So
I
yeah.
I don't know what else you want to know about me. I mean,
Well, I
I'm
love that. I loved everything you said. I like people to be themselves and tell their own story. And I feel like that gives us some information about who you are, what your personality is like. And I
yeah.
just want to call attention to your hat, which says Odin's Call. That is the name of your YouTube channel. So plugging that. And so
There
yeah,
you go. Thank you.
so let's talk about your near death. Do you call it a near death experience? Not everybody does.
Sure, we can call it whatever we want to
Yeah.
call it at the end of the day, but yeah,
And
I had an experience.
yeah, and I want to talk about it because your near death experience is one of my worst nightmares for some, but
Mine too.
yeah, like what happened to you is like I have actual dreams about it's I sometimes wonder if it's a past life thing, but it's something I've never been able to watch movies in which this happens. It's just it's too much. So tell your
Well,
story and yeah.
interestingly enough, my wife, anytime that there's somebody like walking on ice in a movie or something, she'll either fast forward it or she'll turn it off because she
Can't do it.
knows I'm like, ugh, ugh.
Yeah. And you guys will
There
see
was
why in a moment. It's ugh.
there was a video that she put on TV a couple of days ago. It was just a YouTube video of this guy swimming under the ice and then losing track of where he was.
That happened. Was it the Wolf? There was a movie as a kid. It was that I
It wasn't
saw.
a movie.
Oh,
It was like a YouTube short, and the guy kind of panicked, and then he found his lead line that led him back to the hole. But we're both sitting there, and she's looking at me like, "You all right?" Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, tell us what happened, and you live to tell the tale.
Yeah. So I think I was 14. I might have just turned 15, but I think I was 14. And I was walking home from the bar. We
Why
lived
were
in
you
Germany.
at a? Oh, but you were in Germany.
I
That's right.
lived in Germany at the time. And we'd gone to the bar and we were hanging out and shooting pool, and we'd had a beer or two. I'm not sure how many, but nobody was drunk.
Yeah, you had a
And
beer.
we had a beer. And that was pretty normal in Germany for anybody
Yeah,
who's concerned about it. It was a beverage, not an intoxicant. It was just what people drank.
yeah.
But so I was walking home with my friend, and we were walking across this big wide open field with a good blanket of snow sitting on the top of it. And we didn't know what we were walking on. And I stepped at one point and I heard this kind of audible, kind of a crack, and then this kind of echo sound. And I paused, and my thought was initially, okay, I've got to distribute my body weight, and I gotta go down slowly, because if I try to jump or something, I'm just gonna create more downward force, and I'm trying to be all scientific about it. And right as I'm coming to the conclusion that I'm going to try to slowly spread myself out, crack, I'm under the water. And it was deep enough that I was instantly under the water, head under. And we were walking on a rather deep, you know, uh, flowing creek. You could almost call it a river. It was more of a creek, and as soon as I went under, I was dragged immediately some distance down, and I was stuck, and it was pitch black. I don't know if you've ever been out in the country at
Mm-hmm.
night.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of overcast, then there's like no moonlight, it's just pitch black anyway.
Yep.
Well, that under ice with a blanket of snow on it. And I had this moment of, well, I don't know what your language requirements on here, but you know, oh crap,
Yeah. It's
you
fine.
know, I don't know what to do here. And I was in a panic anyway. That kind of physiological response to hitting all that cold water was rough. And I was trying to kind of punch at it, you know, because I could feel the surface of the ice, but punching it wasn't doing anything at all. And I could feel myself still kind of being carried a little bit. So I don't know how far away I was from the initial hole that I'd fallen through, but I'm punching at it, nothing's happening, and it didn't take long. I hadn't prepared myself at all. You know, I wasn't a diver, and probably 30 seconds before my body said, "You're going to breathe now, whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
and you're going to try anyway." And I remember I took this a breath of disgusting, foul creek water. And I was conscious for another couple of seconds after that. And I kind of remember hitching again and then gone. And I guess that begins the real part of this story. That part was scary enough, I guess. But, you know, I'm still here. So I'm kind of over that. Still don't like cold water. And you can't convince me to go swimming in cold water. But that's a physiological thing. What happened afterwards was not at all physiological. So I find myself kind of, it was black for no period of time. And I've described this many times before, but I'll attempt to describe this the best I can here again, because it always seems to evolve a little bit. I get a little bit better at it. But I can only explain the experience that I had on this other side of whatever this was in metaphor, because trying to describe it in kind of physiological terms is nearly impossible, because I felt completely separate from any sense of tactile anything. You know, I didn't have hands and eyes and mouth, and it was almost as if I was one giant eyeball almost. You know, I was just one giant eyeball and one giant 360 ear. And it sounds
That's a
crazy.
really cool way to, I like the way you described that.
Sounds crazy. But I wasn't at all afraid at
Mm-hmm.
all. There was no sense of, oh no, you know, it was, well, this is different. And you know, you asked me earlier about kind of who I am as a person, and I always kind of consider myself a relatively reasonable human being, where I try to make sense of things without kind of defaulting to, yeah, it was an alien, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I it's
Yeah.
just I try not to be that person. Um, and I've had a lot of people tell me, you know, that this is just the effect of a dying brain. Okay. Uh, However, I
Thank you.
apparently have the single most creative brain on planet Earth.
Yeah.
If this is if this is what my brain does in my death throes. So to put this into as good of a meaningful perspective as I can, I had this sense of being very, very overwhelmed, but not like psychotically so, by the amount of input coming at me from every side. And the metaphor I always use was it was almost as if I was just sitting in a completely dark, completely vacant room, and then all of a sudden, all the lights came on. And that's a metaphor. It's not what I saw,
Yeah.
right? I didn't see anything. That's the crazy part. So what I experienced though was this sensation of hearing everything that has ever happened and everything that will ever happen, and experiencing all of those things all simultaneously. And what I've come to, I think, understand about this is the manifestation of a complete absence of time.
Yep.
Right. And minus the limitations of the physical body, to which I'm certain I was still attached in some way, which is why I didn't get it yet. I was taking in all of this or I was kind of sensing all of this input, but not yet capable of sorting it all out. And that's where I hope I'm explaining that part
You're
well.
explaining it perfectly. Keep going.
So and it felt like I was there forever, hours. And it turns out it was somewhere between 5 or 10 minutes but it felt like hours. And I remember just having this sense the entire time, like, well, this is all going to make sense in a minute. So this is okay. I'm all right. You know, one way or another, this is fine. But there was no like longing to go back. There was no longing to stay. It was just, oh, I'm about to understand everything. Cool. Now, no, I will not answer that phone call. Sorry. So as I began to feel myself, frankly, kind of starting to integrate with this, because I think I was pretty close to not being able to be brought back around. I had this voice that kind of just went, not yet. And this was very different from everything else that I was experiencing there, because it was almost tactile. I heard it.
Yeah.
You know, not yet. And at that moment, I woke up just vomiting creek water. My friend had tracked down a paramedic, and waved down a paramedic on the side of the road.
How? Well,
They were driving down the road, you know, and he
I don't
waved the
think
guy
that was an
down.
accident to you.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
I mean, not
Yeah.
an accident, but a coincidence is the word I was.
Lucky, maybe. I mean, could have been.
Could have
You
been.
know, I try to be careful about assigning divine influence to everything, you know, but maybe. But my friend knew where I was. You could see me stuck, like what lodged in this little area, but he couldn't get through the ice. And he certainly wasn't going in the hole that I went in. So
Right.
apparently the two of them had kind of found where the shore of this thing was and started stomping through the ice to get through it. And they pulled me out and started performing CPR on me. And according to that paramedic, they were on the verge of giving up. I was blue. My heart was not beating. I was not breathing at all. And he was about to just be done with it. And then he said, I guess he decided he was going to take one more shot at it. And that's when I started throwing up creek water. And it gets almost a little weirder at that point, because, you know, when I came out of it, it was, wow, this is physically miserable, but okay. I'm glad I'm not dead. But I wasn't afraid of where I was either, which is a weird kind of formative thing for a 14-year-old kid to be.
Yeah.
Because I was completely content either way. I was like, oh, I'm glad I came out of that. That my lungs hurt and I have a headache, but otherwise I don't feel that bad at all. You know, and German winters are cold. So I come out of the ice, or come out of the water, you know, and my clothes are freezing to my body, and you know, but I'm not cold. You know, and part of that's hypothermia, I guess,
Right.
because that's what happens. But I went to the hospital and I was there for an hour after not having, after having no heartbeat and not breathing for, you know, at least 5 minutes and maybe 10, somewhere
And your
in there.
brain is clearly completely functional.
Yeah.
I can tell by sitting and speaking with you, which is a miracle in itself.
Opinions vary, but they literally sent me home an hour later. We're like, we don't see anything wrong with you. Everything's
That's
fine.
crazy.
They gave me a blanket. That was
Yeah.
it. And I've often pondered on, the the source of that voice.
Mhm.
And I've had so many people, it was Jesus, or it was, okay, I don't know who it was, but I know it told me not yet.
Yeah. And I heard you say, I was on the Jeff Mara podcast, that it wasn't
Yeah.
like a voice in your head. I'm a medium, and that's how I hear messages from whatever, entity, spirit. It
Yeah.
just sounds like my own thought. And but you said it sounded, I want to say disembodied. That sounds a little creepy, but it was like, you don't know who it was, but it was a very strong masculine outside of you voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it actually reminds me, now that I think about it, I don't know if I've ever even drawn this correlation actually, but my biological father had died the year before.
Interesting.
Was in a single car accident out in the middle of nowhere, Back Hills, Missouri at that point. And I can actually describe exactly what it wasn't my dad. It wasn't.
Yeah.
100% wasn't. But I had gone to his grave. Oddly enough, we'd gotten some kind of an exception to the graveyard rule, and they allowed us to bury him on the property that our family owned.
Oh, wow.
So that previous year, I'd actually gone up to his grave with my dog, who loved my father more than anything in the world. And my big, unbelievably intelligent dog would follow my ankles wherever I went. And he was just the coolest, most supportive, intelligent. I think he spoke English. He was
Oh,
just unbelievably smart.
what was his name?
Cub,
I love that name.
because when we got him, he looked like a little bear cub.
Oh, cute.
And then he grew up to be a 160-pound dog. So yeah, that was suiting. But I recall it was the first time I'd been to my father's grave since he died. It had been about a year. And I was standing at his grave, and I was emotional, obviously, and I was sad, and I was contemplating, kind of remembering that awful day that all of this happened. And I heard him say my name, like, here.
Wow.
And I rationalized it almost instantaneously. You know, I'm sad, I'm at his grave, whatever, right? I'm making these things happen. What I then realized is that my dog is looking at me with his ears all perked up, and he's just,
Hmm.
what just happened there? Right?
The dog
And I had,
Cubby heard it too.
yeah, it was weird. And then I heard it again, but further away, as if he was calling me from a distance.
Yeah.
And the dog was gone. He took off, and he was gone for 3 days, which wasn't
Wow.
uncommon because he was a country dog anyway.
Yeah.
So he was used to the woods, but it was really weird for him to leave me alone. But
Right.
he took off looking for the source of that voice. And it was like that. Not quite here and not way off in the distance, but it was a voice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was
That's incredible. And I know that you also said, I know that you're not even you and I have a similar, I guess, philosophy or whatever, is we don't know exactly what all of it is. People call it different names. So I now am comfortable using the word God. I wasn't before. When I was younger, growing up, I always sort of shied away from that. Religion freaked me out. And it still isn't something, I'm not religious, but it's interesting because you said something uh, uh, to that effect, which I'll just have you kind of explain. But did this experience change your idea of what's going on whatever the other side, the other dimension, heaven, whatever you want to call it? Or did it just, was it sort of just yeah, how did it inform your belief system now?
so growing up with a gospel Southern Baptist kind of family on one side, and a kind of weird hybrid Catholic whatever on the other side of my family. Um, my entire early life was go to church, get baptized, do all this stuff. And frankly, I've always struggled with, because I read a lot. I read the Bible from beginning to end, and I'd done it several times. And the older I got, every time I read it, I was mortified by it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I want to make undeniably clear that I don't want anybody to change their mind about their faith based on what I'm saying. This is my personal experience, and whatever your personal experience is cool with me. Whatever, right? On the other hand, after having read it a few times, I don't think I really need instructions on how to treat my slaves. And there were just a lot of things in there that I could never, I could just never wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And it was a source of anxiety for me, because I couldn't really express any of that to most people in my family without getting an immediate, well, it's true, so stop asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty common. My mom wasn't so much that way, but everybody on either side of my family was. And asking questions was kind of out of the question. And, if you're going to ask that question, you need to talk to the pastor. And then I would talk to pastors and I would say, hey, I'm having a struggle with this thing. And it would always, well, faith of a mustard seed, and, all the kind of go-to phrases to get people to stop asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always, since I was a kid, kind of been a student of human psychology as it is, and starting to recognize some of those neurolinguistic programming things that people do to change, to get you out of your current questioning state and just make you pliable. And I saw it a lot in all of the churches that I went to as a kid.
Yeah.
And what always kind of had me in this state of, I don't know if I really believe this.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience of having, well, I think, seen what's coming, or at least getting a glimpse of it, is that there's truth to be found in all of that. There are certain things that you can find in all of the Abrahamic religions that they have in common that I can get behind. There's a lot that I can find in Buddhism that I can get behind.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that I can find in every religion that I can get behind for the most part. But do I accept any of them as 100% truth? I can't. And I wish I could, but I don't. And I mean, there was a good long period of time where I was almost like militantly atheist, at least as it pertained to like a monotheistic, all seeing, all loving, all omnipotent being. I didn't believe in that at all. And to a degree, I still don't. Not an omnipotent one, not an omniscient one, not one that's interacting with humanity on any core level on an everyday basis. And frankly, I've got a number of family members that resent that, and they're upset with me for that. And that's okay. They're on their journey and I'm on mine, and that's fine. I'll love them anyway, whether the feeling is mutual or not. But in my case, the one thing that I accidentally encountered, finding myself in this weird, unnatural trance state as a result of listening to a song I'd never heard before. And here's something crazy that I've never told anybody on any platform ever. So exclusive to you, Shannon.
I'm so honored.
Are you? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So, some years ago, not very long ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I guess, I found this website that plays like FM radio stations from around the world. And I was bouncing around. I'm a music fan. I love music. If it is music performed well, I like it.
Me too.
And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
hip hop or classical music or metal or what, I love it all. And I was kind of somewhere in one of the Nordic countries, and I heard this song, and it was just getting me. And I went, what is that? No, it was Iceland. That's what it was. I remember now. And I thought, man, I hope this DJ speaks English and says the name of whoever is doing this so I can find it, And I waited, And sure enough, they were speaking Icelandic, but I heard this Wardruna, and I went, "What is that?" Right? So I looked that up, and sure enough, that's the band. And it was the weirdest thing because I found one of their songs, I turned it on, and I sat there, and within seconds, it was like it was talking to my DNA. It was wild. And I talk about this, and it actually makes the hairs on my arm stand up more than the near death thing does, because it was wild. So as I kind of drifted off into this conscious but uh transcendental state, I find myself standing in this moon bathed uh basin ringed with trees, and the sensation is very difficult to describe because it was such a perfect representation of reality that I can't imagine that it was a dream state. I could feel the breath coming out of my lungs, the little micro movements of keeping my balance on the grass. I could feel I could feel the frost on the grass just breaking under my feet. I am watching plumes of condensed air coming out of me. And I've actually, well, as I'm standing there going, I wonder what this is all about. This guy comes walking out of the woods. And he's got this kind of, I guess now I know, this kind of stereotypically kind of, I guess for the viewers not in the know, this kind of Viking garb, right? He's got this robe on, and he's got two ravens, one on each shoulder. And for reference, I had no idea. This is nothing I've ever had an interest in. Ever. I had no idea who I'm looking at right now. And he kind of walks up to me, and then I see he's also got a wolf that's just behind his legs, following behind him. And he walks up to me and he looks at me, and I had this sense of just being in the presence of a father, not my father, a father. And he made eye contact with me, and I mean I could smell the leather. It was so tactile. I was present in that moment. And he said, oh, and he's got an eye patch, which was, I'm like, what is all this? And he says to me, "Look for me and I'll find you." And then I kind of came out of my state and I went, what the hell was that? Right? I don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have those moments. I have the occasional moment where I pick up on things from other people that they're like, how did you know that? You know?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, that kind of stuff doesn't happen to me. Accidentally or intentionally. I ever. And I'm like, what? One eye, two ravens, dog. What is going on here? And it was literally a Google search that made me go, oh, that's Odin.
Oh, and you had no knowledge of Odin before.
No, I mean, not, I mean,
I mean, you'd
other than
heard of,
the,
yeah,
other
you,
than the Marvel movies and,
yeah.
video games and whatever, but otherwise, no, not really. And so kind of my core values,
Mm-hmm.
2023, present day, and permanently, as far as I can tell, are the 9 noble virtues. And I don't spend any time in worship
Mm-hmm.
of anything, but what I found is that, those gods speak to me,
Mm-hmm.
not literally, and they don't request to be worshiped,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, perseverance.
I was going to ask you, and then I thought, is it going to take too long? But no, you have them down.
As
Yeah.
long as I follow those 9 noble virtues, and in fact, those are the virtues that I look for in other people. Those are the people that I want to associate with, or people that demonstrate those virtues, or most of them anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that they don't, I want to help them kind of get there.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So, from a faith perspective,
Mhm.
I'm an anomaly, and I get it.
Right.
Um, but there are many things that have come about as a result of these experiences that I've had. The biggest one is a lack of any fear as it pertains to the end of this, whatever this is.
Mhm.
And when I contemplate that experience of having been under that ice and feeling that overwhelming everything all at once sensation, now as an adult and after having read the very limited stuff that you can find about Odin and all of that progeny, I can't explain it any better than the Rainbow Road,
I heard you say
right? The
that.
rainbow
Yeah.
the rainbow bridge, right? I can't explain it any better than that, because what's a rainbow?
It's everything. It's all the colors.
It's
It's
all the
white.
colors,
Yeah, it's
right? It's
everything.
everything, right?
Yeah.
And that was the sensation that I had, was just, it's all here. I don't get it yet, but I
Mhm.
will soon. It's all here. And that's the craziest thing for me,
I love
is
that.
I'm not afraid of anything. Well, I I'm not afraid of anything as it pertains to me.
Mhm.
I'm scared on behalf of my kids. And,
Yeah, your
you know,
father.
I'm a dad, and I'm a husband, and I'm a but I don't scare easily,
Mhm.
and I'm not afraid to die
Yeah.
at all, because I already did.
Right.
And
Yep.
it wasn't that bad. It was okay.
In fact, I really appreciate your sharing your story in general, because I still have some questions for you, but
Sure.
I think so many people have a fear. Well, first of all, a fear of even if you don't have a fear of what happens, there's the fear of the pain that happens before the death. And I have found from speaking to so many near-death experiencers that their soul leaves the body before there's even time to feel. Now, I know that isn't always the case, but what's comforting to me is people, like I said, I had this fear of being trapped under the ice. When I was a kid, I saw it was a movie. It was about a guy who went out and studied the wolves, and I forget what it's called. Never Cry Wolf, I think. And that scene stuck with me forever because he got trapped beneath the ice and was banging on the ice. And it's such a scary feeling. And then I've seen a horror movie where people are in a swimming pool, might have been like Nightmare on Elm Street or something. And then all of a sudden they can't get out of the water.
The
But
covers closing on them. Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
from people I've spoken with who have drowned, they all say it's actually the most peaceful thing. I'm sure not like in the moments before
Oh yeah. Once you fade,
surrender.
yeah, it's quick, you know.
Yeah,
But yeah, the moments before it, just the physiological response that you have to being dunked in really cold water
the
sucks to
discomfort.
begin with. It's
Yeah,
miserable. And then your body, if you've ever hit cold water, jumped into a really cold pool even, it's right?
yeah,
So, and kind of forcing yourself not to take that immediate breath, because you'll just immediately die if you do,
right.
is hard.
But it's involuntary and you have to do it.
It's involuntary at first, but and I did the same thing. I started to do it as I was going under, and I had to kind of go, oh, don't do that, you know. don't
Yeah,
yeah, don't do it, not yet. Try to get out first, then
yeah,
breathe. But yeah, it was that part was scary,
yeah,
but the the time on the time I experienced the elongated elastic time of whatever was there, um was completely detached from the experience of actually getting there.
yeah. I think that's just really comforting. And recently I was driving and I saw behind me a goose got hit on the road. And I was like, no, I tried to turn around. I was like, I'm going to try to save the goose. And I saw the goose get hit again. And I was like, no, I was so sad. And I just went, okay, just remember, it's going to be over. Like, it's not going to
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
in like a minute, it's not going to matter that happened. And I
Right.
comfort myself by saying, its soul is at peace. Its soul is at peace. It's fine. It's okay. It's just really hard to see it happen. And I don't mean to get all dark with that. It's just how I think. I just always think about every time I see an animal on the side of the road, I'm like, oh, and then I just think, no, they're at peace. It's all over now. It's fine. But I would love to ask you, because you did mention sometimes you know things and people are like,
Hmm.
how did you know that? In my experience, from having spoken with people who've left their bodies at least one time, that is not always, but usually what happens, whether you go
Hmm.
full-fledged medium or whether you just are much more. You said you trust your intuition. I heard you say that on Jeff Mara
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you describe your experience of that?
Um, it was almost a cheat code for being a sales guy
Yeah. Reading
because
people?
yeah, and I don't even know that it's so much reading people, it's just understanding intentions,
Oh yeah.
right? And I, I can do it on the phone, I can do it in person,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of know when somebody's not there yet.
Yep.
And every now and then I get a really, really big jolt from something that says, tell this person this, tell this person this, tell them this, tell them this. Right now, tell them this. And then I also know whether or not I can. And that's I've had things kind of mad at me from time to time, you know. You didn't
Yeah.
say it. Yeah, I know, because they would lose their minds and I'm not going to do that,
What kind
you
of
know.
things would they have you say?
Oh no, just Patricia says hi. Stuff like that,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Like
And
is it like strangers when you're out or people you're dealing with?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't get any scary stuff that
No, yeah.
I I that stuff probably exists, but I don't
Yeah.
interact with it. I don't think they'd like me
I
if
don't either.
that's
No,
out
I
there.
don't either. I only get Patricia says hi, but I don't say it unless I'm already in the conversation about I'm a medium and they're like, wow, that's cool. Tell me more. And suddenly I'll be like, your grandma's here. But otherwise, I'm not going to walk up to someone in the grocery store, because I'm not sure I'm right. And if I'm not, I'm going to look ridiculous. And
If
what
I'm
if it
a hundred
upsets them?
percent sure I'm right, I might tell them.
Yeah.
And then there are sometimes that if I don't get it unless it's right.
Yep.
So it doesn't happen all the time,
Yeah.
but it happens enough. But the biggest thing that came out of it was the empath ability,
Hmm.
right? I know what people are feeling when I talk to them, and that's not always fun.
Yeah.
And more so, it's miserable for my kids when they want to try to get away with something
Hmm.
because you know yesterday it happened, right? I come into my room, my son's actually sitting on my side of the bed, and nobody else looking at it would know anything was up. And I go, "What happened? What's wrong?" And he's like, I said, "No, what? Talk to me." And he's like, "No, everything's fine." And I go, "You know better, man. Just
Hmm.
tell me." He got his feelings hurt, and
Yeah.
he didn't want to talk about it. So he told me when he told me about it, he was like, "Oh, I feel better now. I got it out." I'm like, "Yeah, you just got to tell me, dude." But I also had, um, well, for lack of a better way of putting this, I had a little bit of a problem child for a little while, and it
Hmm.
drove her bonkers because I immediately knew
Right.
from a distance. I every now and then I just call her. "What are you doing?" "I'm not doing anything." "Yeah, my radar's going off right now."
Yeah.
"What are you doing?" "Oh, I'll come home."
Yeah.
And it kind of comes and goes, but it's handy. It's handy sometimes because I don't ever use it for evil.
No,
I
it's not.
I
I know you
can't.
wouldn't.
I can't. But I just I'm too ethical for that, I guess. But there's always that moment where I'm talking to somebody about, selling them something, and I know what their objection's about to be because I can feel
Hmm.
they don't have the money,
Right.
right? They um, One of the smartest salespeople I ever met said, "Deal with the unspoken objection, and you'll make all the sales."
Yeah.
Well, I know the unspoken objection better than most
Hmm.
because I just catch on. They're broke. they feel antsy about it, they're not sure, and I can address things before they have to say it.
Right. Which is the
Right.
best kind of salesperson because you want somebody who lets you know it's your choice. I'm here to support you if you're ready, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
push you into it. And then you go, you know what? I will go back to that guy because I trust him.
And what's interesting about that is I've been a sales guy forever, 25 years I've been doing this stuff. And I've won, well, a couple years ago, I won an award for the number one salesperson in the country for this large um, platform that we sell. Nobody ever sold more than I did that year. And they asked me, what's the secret? And I said, oh, that's really easy. Ask questions, don't lie.
It's that
That's
simple.
it. And they're like, that's the entire secret. Yes, ask questions, don't lie. You ask enough questions, people will tell you what they want, tell them how much it costs, and they can decide whether or not to do it. That's it.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what's your biggest objection? I don't get them because I ask enough questions that I already know what the objection would have been, and I deal with it before they can ask it. Oh, oh. So a lot of that's practice, but I've always been good at it.
Yeah.
I've always been good at it. And I wasn't before I had this transformative out of this existence experience.
Yeah. And I find that to be very common. It's just because, in my opinion, or what I've noticed is it's just when you leave your body like that, you remember who you are and you remember how, I mean, that we're all capable of that. We just aren't necessarily aware of it. We don't necessarily believe in it. It's you've connected with the quote unquote other side. So you
Right.
just remember how to do it. That's all it is. And I find that
Yeah.
people who've had NDEs also have a lot of out of body experiences in some cases. And it sounds like your interaction with Odin might have been such a thing. Going back to that, I know you said there's still more to be discovered, but do you have more insight about, um, is your name a Viking, like taken from a taken from I know it's a Viking name, Ragnar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so do you feel, uh, would this have been like a past life thing, do you think? Or is it more of a spirit guide? Or is it just an interest? Why, I wonder what that is, what the message was. Have you figured it out yet?
To an extent.
Yeah.
Right. I think one of the reasons that I connect with Odin, and by the way, I'm gonna pause there because there's a number of people out there that have taken some of those symbols and some of those things and turned them into something that I would never, ever, ever associate with.
Right.
Um, and anybody out there that's wearing any of those symbols in tattoo form or anything like that, if you're harboring any kind of racist or generally intolerant things attached to that, I would like to find you and sand all of those things off of your body.
Thank you. Amen.
You don't deserve them, because that is not what Odin was about. That is not what any of that culture was ever about. And that it was co-opted by some awful people pisses me off. So now that
Thank you
that's
for
out of the
that.
way,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't associate my one singular guidepost for how I feel about any individual is entirely based on their personality personally. And anybody who does otherwise, I cannot associate with them.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, um, how I look for, I've always looked for wisdom. Always. I've always looked for wisdom. Um, Even as a kid, a broke kid most of the time. We never had anything. Most of my meals came out of a food pantry somewhere. Most of my clothes came out of a donation pile somewhere. It was not an easy childhood, but the library was free, and it was a lot of entertainment, and it was a lot of knowledge that I could pour into my young and evolving mind at the time. And I got pretty good at, you know, kind of figuring out who I was and what I believed, even if it flew in the face of what everybody around me was believing. And I think that quest for knowledge is the thing that made my friend Odin kind of go, hey, we're on the same path. because Odin never presented himself. In fact, there's a lot of lore that indicates that they think he was just a real person that walked around that was constantly looking for wisdom,
Hmm.
right? Gave his own eye in exchange for wisdom, hung himself on the tree of life for wisdom. And I think that's why he paid a visit. You're
I
doing
think
the
that,
same thing.
yeah.
And, it's neat that you're going and checking out all these other cultures. I did the same thing.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
you're like kindred spirits.
yeah, and that's how I feel about it. I wear a Mjolnir most of the time, which is Thor's hammer. I've got tattoos galore, and I really kind of immersed myself in all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it because it's Viking stuff.
Right.
Um, for those of you not in the know, Viking is a verb. It's a thing that people did, not something that someone might have been. To go a Viking was to take your team and go find resources to bring home or take over new lands, to expand the reach of your people. That's what Viking was. The people were just Norsemen.
I love this because I learn something new every day. I love
Yeah,
doing interviews because I like to learn from other people, and that's really interesting. Now
yeah.
now I want to go look up Odin and read more about him.
So people ask me, are you a Viking? I'm like, no, no, nobody was ever a Viking, actually.
Yeah,
But
they were
is that
Norsemen.
was you recognize Viking culture,
Yeah.
right? And I get that because it all sounds fun and cute and violent, and some of those people were horrible people at the
Oh
end of the
yeah.
day. But that's not what I associate with.
Right.
I use the word pretty casually, and I kind of call my group of followers Truth Vikings because we're questing for
Yeah.
truth,
Yeah.
right?
That's cute. Yeah, I like that.
So, but yeah, my entire basis around all of that is not any of the Viking stuff so much as it is
Right.
the nine noble virtues.
Which is beautiful. That's so nice. Well, this has been so much fun having you on, and I love who you are. I like hearing about I've enjoyed hearing about your life just as much as I've enjoyed hearing about your near-death experience. And I just want to thank you so much for being here and sharing it. You were delightful, and it really means a lot that you showed up with your time and
No,
energy.
you're delightful.
No, you.
No, you.
No,
I
you.
think the chemistry was good, and you need to come on my channel next.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
That would be cool.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ragnar Ericsson. You're my new best
Well, thanks
friend.
for having me.
It was
Well, I'll
such a
be your
pleasure.
best friend.
Thank you.
Well,